Hey everyone, and welcome back for another deep dive.
It's great to be back.
Today we're going to be looking at senior living.
All
So
right.
we've been doing a lot of research on this lately, looking at a bunch of different sources, just trying to understand the whole landscape a little bit better. What are the different options that are out there for senior living? What's the kind of demand that we're seeing for these different types of communities? And then also specifically focusing on Odisha.
Right.
What are some of the challenges that are unique to that region? And also, what are some of the things that are being done to kind of improve the situation there?
Yeah, and I think that's something that's super relevant to a lot of people, as we kind of think about our own futures and think about, our parents and our loved ones, this is something that is going to become more and more relevant, I think, in the coming years.
Absolutely, yeah. And one of the things that I was really interested to learn about was just how many different types of senior living communities there are out there.
Yeah.
It's not just a one size fits all kind of situation.
Not at all. And
Yeah.
I think a lot of people don't realize that, they kind of have this one image in their mind of what senior living is, but it's actually a really diverse kind of landscape.
Right. And it's really tailored to meet the needs of, a wide range of seniors with different levels of, independence and care needs.
Exactly.
So yeah, maybe we can kind of start there, like just kind of walk through some of the different types of senior living communities that are out there and what makes each one unique.
Sure. Yeah. So I think, one of the first ones that comes to mind is independent living communities, and this is really geared towards seniors who are, pretty much self-sufficient. They don't need a lot of assistance with, activities of daily living.
Right.
But they might be looking for, a more social environment, or they might be looking to kind of free themselves from the burdens of home ownership.
Right. All the yard work and the maintenance and all that stuff.
Exactly. Yeah. So, you can imagine, having your own apartment or your own villa within a community setting.
Right.
And, there are often a lot of amenities that are available, things like shared dining spaces and social activities and maybe even, housekeeping services.
So you still get to maintain your privacy and your independence, but you also have that option to kind of, connect with other people and not have to worry about all the upkeep of a house.
Exactly. Yeah, and I think one of the surprising things that we found in our research is that a lot of people who live in independent living communities are actually incredibly active.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, they're going on trips and they're taking classes and they're, participating in all sorts of
So it's
activities.
kind of like a lifestyle choice almost.
Yeah, it really is. I think for a lot of people, it's not just about, needing help. It's about wanting to kind of live in a community and have all those opportunities for engagement.
Right. That makes sense. And I think that, kind of leads into the next type of community, which is assisted living.
Right.
So with assisted living, we're talking about seniors who need a little bit more help with, their daily activities.
Exactly. Yeah.
Hmm.
So, things like bathing and dressing and managing medications,
Right.
maybe meal preparation, things like that.
Right.
But the key here is that they're still able to maintain a good degree of independence.
Right. It's not like they're completely, dependent on caregivers
Yeah.
for everything.
Right. Yeah. And I think that's a really important distinction because, a lot of people, when they think of assisted living, they think of nursing homes.
Right.
But assisted living is really about, providing that support while still allowing people to, live their lives as independently as possible.
Right. And it's about kind of tailoring the care to the individual's needs.
Exactly. Yeah. So, everyone's needs are different. And so the care plan is really individualized.
Right. And then, kind of on the other end of the spectrum, you have memory care units.
Right.
And these are specifically for people who are living with Alzheimer's disease or other forms of dementia.
Exactly. Yeah. And these are really specialized environments. They're designed to be very secure and safe. And the staff is trained in how to care for people with dementia.
Right. And it's really about kind of creating a routine and a structure for them.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because, for people with dementia, routine and structure are really important.
Right.
It helps to reduce confusion and anxiety.
Right. And these units are also often designed, with special features to kind of help with wayfinding and things like that.
Exactly. Yeah. So, things like, color-coded walls and clear signage and, things that can help people to kind of navigate the space more easily.
Right. So we've talked about independent living, assisted living, memory care.
Right.
And then there's also skilled nursing facilities, which are often referred to as nursing homes.
Right.
So what's the main difference between, those and the other types of communities we've been talking about?
Yeah. So skilled nursing facilities are really for people who need a higher level of medical care. So, this might be people who are recovering from a surgery or an illness,
Okay.
or it might be people who have chronic conditions that require, 24-hour care.
Okay.
And so, in these facilities, there's a lot of medical staff on hand. There's doctors and nurses and therapists,
Right.
and they're able to provide, a really high level of care.
Right. And then there's also continuing care retirement communities or CCRCs.
Right.
And those are kind of interesting because they offer a continuum of care.
Exactly. Yeah. So the idea with the CCRC is that you can move in, when you're relatively healthy and independent.
Right.
And then as your needs change, you can transition to different levels of care within the same community.
Right. So you don't have to move, if you need more help.
Exactly. Yeah. So you might start out in an independent living apartment.
Right.
And then if you need more help, you can move to an assisted living unit. And then if you need even more help, you can move to a skilled nursing unit,
Okay.
all within the same community.
So it's kind of like aging in place.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that's a really appealing aspect for a lot of people. They don't want to have to move multiple times as their needs change.
Right. Uproot their lives and
Yeah.
have to kind of adjust to a whole new environment.
Exactly.
So yeah, I mean, it's interesting just how many different options there are out there. And it seems like,
Yeah.
the demand for these communities is only going to continue to grow.
Oh, absolutely. And I think, there are a few different reasons for that.
Okay.
One is that, we have an aging population.
Right.
People are living longer.
Yeah.
And so there are just more older adults now than there ever have been before.
Right. And it's not just that people are living longer. It's that, thanks to advances in healthcare, people are living healthier for longer.
That's right.
So they might be more active and they might have, more needs for support and services.
Exactly.
And then, another factor is that family structures are changing.
Right.
We're seeing a lot more nuclear families and, adult children are often moving away from their parents for work or for other reasons.
Right.
And so, it's becoming more and more difficult for families to provide care for their aging loved ones.
Yeah, that's a huge factor.
Yeah. So all of these things are kind of contributing to this growing demand for senior living communities.
Right.
And I think, one of the things that's really interesting about this is that it's not just a trend that we're seeing in, developed countries.
Right.
It's something that's happening all over the world, including in India.
Absolutely. And I think, India is a really interesting case study because you have such a large and rapidly growing elderly population.
Right.
And so, the demand for senior living is just exploding there.
Yeah. And I think, as we kind of shift our focus to Odisha specifically,
Uh-huh.
there are some unique challenges that elderly citizens face in that region.
Yeah, absolutely.
One of the things that we've read about is that there's just a lack of, well-organized senior living facilities in Odisha.
Yeah. And I think, that's a problem in a lot of parts of India.
Right.
The senior living industry is still relatively new.
Right.
And so, there are just not as many options available as there are in some other countries.
Right. And then, another challenge that's specific to Odisha is that you have a lot of non-resident ODS or NROs,
Right.
Who are living abroad.
Yeah.
And they're often concerned about the well-being of their aging parents back home.
Right. And, they might not be able to be there to provide care themselves.
Right.
And so,
Yeah.
they're looking for options for their parents.
Right.
But, the options in Odisha are just limited.
Right. Yeah. And so I think, it's important to kind of acknowledge those challenges.
Absolutely.
But it's also encouraging to see that the government is taking some steps to kind of address the situation. We read about this new senior citizen policy in Odisha. And it seems like it has some really good goals, in terms of kind of improving the lives of elderly citizens.
It does, yeah. The policy is really focused on, enhancing access to health care,
Okay.
Ensuring income security, strengthening social welfare programs,
Right.
Improving safety and security, and providing better legal protections.
Wow. So it sounds like it's kind of a comprehensive approach.
Yeah, it really is.
And we also read that the policy specifically talks about expanding senior care services to rural areas,
Right.
which I think is really important.
Yeah, absolutely. Because a lot of the elderly population in Odisha lives in rural areas.
Right.
And so, it's important to make sure that those people have access to the services that they need.
Right. And we also read about, some initiatives to increase financial assistance for elderly citizens.
Right.
And to establish, better social engagement programs.
Right.
So it seems like, there's a real effort to kind of address the social and emotional needs of seniors as well.
Yeah, I think that's really important.
Yeah, and speaking of kind of new developments,
Right.
one of the things that we were really interested to learn about is this upcoming senior living project by Ascent Buildhome Developers in Jharsuguda.
Yeah.
It sounds like it's going to be, a really state-of-the-art facility.
It does. Yeah, it sounds really impressive. They're planning to have, all sorts of amenities and services.
Right. Things like healthcare support and, social activities and all sorts of things.
Right. And I think, it's really encouraging to see that kind of investment in senior living in Odisha.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's not just about, the physical facilities.
Right.
It's also about, creating a community,
Absolutely.
a place where seniors can feel connected and supported.
Right.
And so I think, that's something that's really important to keep in
Hmm.
mind, as we kind of think about the future of senior living.
Right.
Um, it's not just about, the bricks and mortar, it's about the people and the connections.
It really is.
Yeah. So anyway, I mean, I think we've covered a lot of ground today.
We have.
But, I think it's clear that senior living is a really complex and evolving issue.
It is.
And there are a lot of different factors to consider.
Right.
But I think the most important thing is that, we start having these conversations.
Absolutely.
We start thinking about what our needs are and what our options are.
Right.
And, we start planning for the future.
Yeah, and I think, the more informed we are, the better choices we can make.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I guess, as we kind of wrap things up here,
Right.
I would just encourage everyone to, do their own research,
Yeah.
talk to their families and their loved ones,
Right.
and just kind of start thinking about what they want their future to look like.
Yeah, and there are a lot of resources available online. There are government websites and there are websites for different senior living communities.
Right.
And so, there's a lot of information out there.
Yeah, so there's no excuse not to be informed.
Right.
All right, well, thanks so much for joining us for another deep dive.
It's been a pleasure.
We'll see you next time.
See you later.
Bye.